2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another exciting episode where we are going and continuing our discussion on the Tunbridge trilogy from Vermont. And the second film in the trilogy of films is in fact called Man with a Plan. And it was filmed in, what was it? Was it still? Yes, 1996. So that was 4 years later than Vermont is for Lovers. And it was directed by John O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dan, just wanted to get your first impressions of this film. And before I do, I guess it's basically about a man who just decides to by the name of Fred Tuttle, and he's faced with his father's impending hip operation and his failing farm, needs to make a 6-digit salary with a 4th grade education.
10th, sir. 10th. Okay.
Don't forget,
So he runs for U.S. representative for Vermont with a markedly bizarre campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Will he triumph over the incumbent Bill Blackley?
And that sweet fucking hairdo.
So
Time will tell. It's basically about the greatest political campaign ever visited on the face of the planet. Okay. And it all happens in small town Vermont, baby.
I don't know. The one that followed was even better.
Dan, what were your first impressions of this film going into it?
Just a good comedy, and the fact that it was in my area. Mm-hmm. I recognized, a lot of the landmarks and the way people talk in this area. That was all. Mm-hmm. It was just like a time capsule to witness,
Okay. Going into Brandon, why don't you tell me your first thoughts on this particular film?
Well, I remember first hearing about it from Dan. I don't remember whether I'd heard about it separately or during one of these discussions. I know I heard about the trilogy, but I swear I've heard Man with a Plan before. It might have been watching Rebel Gaming Club, might have just been in a conversation, but I know I've heard it before, and it intrigued me. And so when I finally got a hold of it, I had to check it out, but I had to watch Vermont is for Lovers first, which I am thankful I did that first. Because when I saw Man with a Plan, I knew it was like, yeah, this is the best of the three. There's no way they can top this with the third film. And it really was cool. I especially identify with it because I've known people like Fred Tuttle. I mean, I grew up in the country, and these individuals like him are all over the country. These older farmers who spent most of their life living in the mountains doing these works. I mean, I've known people who did welding for a living, and they would just weld like stuff like farm tools, and just we would take our mowers to them. Talked almost not with that same accent necessarily, but with that same basic thick version of the local accent. It's just and I could see him. I could have actually seen him going around and saying, screw them all, I'm running for office. And that's just or I need some extra money. These people make a lot of money. I'm going to go run for office. And this to me, I just thought that was just great. I read the concept. I was hooked right away.
Okay. Going over to you, Jake. What was your first impressions of this film?
Well, I have to admit, I'm not 100% sure myself. I feel like this probably was the first one that was brought up in conversation, but so I probably heard about it before I heard about the trilogy as a whole. But I, as I said before with Vermont's for Lovers, this one really came on my map, when it was discussed as, hey, maybe we should do this. Dan, why don't you come present this to us? And I had heard all along, I think that this was the one to watch. And then when I got it and I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, that does look kind of interesting. For the life of me, I cannot remember if I actually heard, I feel like I heard a little bit about the actual real life follow-up to this when it happened, but it would have been in passing, probably not. I probably would not have really, really registered it, but I feel like I heard a little bit. And we'll get into that as we go on because I'm fascinated by what this movie actually triggered. But I enjoyed it thoroughly. I like a good political comedy. I do like the idea, even though it's clear that Fred and I would have differed on certain issues. I like his approach to politics very much. The whole he is honest to a fault, and one could really see that as being his main charm with a lot of voters. They probably are like,
Yeah.
he's such a straight shooter. You can almost get away with saying anything as long as you prove that you're honest. And he really does come across as someone who doesn't court the vote by saying what you want to hear. He just says whatever pops into his head. And
And he was realistic about like proactive approaches to our problems. He's the only politician I've ever seen literally try to dig us out of debt. Okay.
And I did.
Although
I did like the fact that when asked point blank, why are you running for office? He was like, well, arthritis got bad and I had to sell the cows. My dad needs a hip operation, So, them politicians, they make a lot of money. And, and the ones down there in Washington, they're just wasting it on their jet trips and everything. And I was like, I kind of like that on the one hand, he is taking Washington to task for their excesses, but he's also very blatant that he's in it for the money. And I like that approach. And I don't really agree with it, but I like it. And so it was, and he's just a hilarious character. Like I said in our previous discussion, he really does remind me. I mean, the pseudo-documentary vibe of these films is probably part of it because all the Christopher Guest films star Eugene Levy. Most of them are co-written by him. So, yeah. But to me, there is a passing resemblance. But just again, I feel like it's an older Eugene Levy who talks like Boomhauer. I mean, that's kind of and it just. And they were talking, Brandon was talking about knowing people. I worked with a guy that we call Boomhauer because he talked like that. It's kind of, there are people that have that sort of mumblecore way of doing things that just, the idea of a politician talking like that just cracks me up. I think that's hilarious. But I did want to ask Dan, when you were introduced to this one, was it before or after the actual campaign?
It was after.
It was after. So had you heard about that first, or did you?
Not really.
Okay.
You know what I mean? A lot of this was all spoofed in mockumentary style, so it wasn't like this was like a super legit thing. So unless you were going to the Tunbridge Fair, unless you were around that area at that time when they were filming, I don't think you would have really known about it.
Well, it's my understanding that 2 years later he actually did run for office. That's why I was wondering if you'd.
Yeah,
but he ran for it in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, Yeah,
That's
no.
why I was curious.
Copies of this to like everyone. That'd have been awesome. And just going around handing this out.
That would well, they did it supposedly to promote the film, so it wouldn't surprise me if some copies were handed out that way.
That'd be a rad way to get it for sure.
Right. And actually, I remember I have a couple cassettes. This is something totally
in the corner there.
This is something totally different, but I remember a band was promoting their new single. So I have a couple of cassette tapes from my county fair that were just handed out as a bonus at the fair. I could almost see a copy of this film being handed out on VHS, probably with like just a bootleg version.
I mean, they sold a ton of those movies. I mean, those were everywhere. You could go to the gas station. You could, you know what I mean? It was abundant. You know, every video store in the area had like an end display on the counter.
That's awesome.
Actually, it reminds me of the real campaign. Reminded me of one that Michael Moore had done on his series that he even highlighted again on his series, The Awful Truth. Ficus, where he ran a ficus against the incumbent.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, it was actually kind of funny because in the real campaign, the guy he ran as a Republican. He won the actual primary, and then he endorsed the Democrat afterwards.
Yes.
So he endorsed the ficus?
No. He's not.
I'm talking about the one with the film base, but I love the ficus one because the ficus actually got quite a few votes. They threw them all out.
What party was the ficus on?
I don't remember. I think it was something made up, which was just.
I love in this one that Fred is running on the regressive party.
Yeah,
that's the regressive party.
Oh, geez.
It's kind of funny how how several weeks back that we went on about take the money and run, because that's done in a documentary type style with a narrator, and that's what you get in the first part of this film. You get kind of a documentary, a mockumentary type style with a narrator, and you see this man go through some mistakes that he makes. So in a sense, I'm looking at this from a Woody Allen perspective, because of the style of filmmaking that it starts out with. I mean, it eventually goes into kind of a movie kind of a style, but it starts out that kind of way, at least to me, from my perspective. Kind of like a Schusterman Levine kind of a way.
A little bit.
A little bit. Mo, have you done your intro yet?
First perspectives, and that was my perspective.
Dan sent the bitch to me in a box. It has like a little gold sticker on the front of it from some Lebanon, New Hampshire video store or some shit, and that's never coming off. I watched it and loved it, man. I mean, I never would have thought that there was other movies in the series, and I'm pretty sure Dan didn't fucking tell me. So I just thought this was it. I mean, if you just saw this as a standalone thing, you wouldn't think that there was like 2 other movies that were done that are connected in some way, you know? It just seems like a weird little indie film type thing that happened, and yeah, I never thought to even look into it, you know? It's hard not to fall in love with Fred. I think that's just a thing, you know. Like if I lived there, I would have voted for him for sure, just because of some of the stuff he was saying too. I love like so many things about the movie. It's impossible for me to really quantify it in a first impression, because right away I was in love with like every fucking thing about the movie, and it's rare for me to see a movie that I watch and I enjoy that much. So thank you, Dan.
Welcome.
Yeah.
It truly is a gem, and you've done a good service to the world all the times that you've exposed people to that, for sure. It's my first impression from it was sort of one of those things where it is like, yeah, you gotta like recommend this to people.
Right. And it also helps. I think it does help a little bit more just in general, like just tying it into the new. It's almost a shame we couldn't get Dustin on tonight as much as he loves Bernie, because I feel like this really does help a little bit with getting that whole idea of. I feel like I probably understand a little bit more of how he has been as successful as he has, because Fred in the actual campaign apparently got over 20% of the vote after endorsing his rival in the other party. Which really makes you wonder.
I love how he keeps saying that he thinks this count as some type of computer error.
Right.
Like that's a continual thing in the movie. Like it could be wrong, it's just so innocent and honest, I mean, that's a thing I think too. If you notice, there's the whole running thing in it too, where they're Republicans, and I think, not to be like insulting, but I think that a lot of rural folks that I've encountered have a similar grasp of politics as fucking Fred. It's like totally an innocent, like, oh, he says he's gonna get jobs in the US, that's a good thing, like that's how they base their votes. A lot of, they don't have fucking Twitter, man. This guy's out there, he's reading it in the local Gazette. Like,
even his plan, his Fred plan, at first it sounds insane, but it actually is pro jobs in a sense that Dinky.
Dinky. Just to lay it out for you, it is friendly, renewable, extraterrestrial, and dinky. Those are the 4 points that he's running on, and I could not agree more with every one of them.
The dinky, he says at one point it refers to small farms. And at first you think, oh my God, where's he going with this? But then when he says that, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he's trying to help small local business.
He wants to help local businesses. He wants to get rid of the conglomerates. And I'm like, I actually don't really mind that idea. I think that's not a bad plan. I found it, but it just says dinky and he doesn't explain it. You look at him like, huh?
I love it. I didn't even care. Like, dinky.
You think he's
one of those buttons, and here's my vote, sir. But it's like, if you thought of it seriously and you worded it eloquently like a politician would, it wouldn't be a bad platform to run on, where it's like friendly community outreach, renewable energy, interest in science and even small
extraterrestrial. He did have I did have something to say about the extraterrestrial. The whole idea of we're just going to launch the trash into space.
Dump all the trash in space.
Yeah. Just get that garbage out of our country. Get it up there in space.
That's not going to work.
And then immediately after, he's like, would you like to see me up in space? I love it. Yes, I do, Fred. I want to see you on the next SpaceX mission.
Of course, he's got the.
I think it's only fitting that we make fucking Elon Musk or whatever put a copy of this on VHS in one of those SpaceX flights so that Fred can at least in some way go to space.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of the campaign that Fred was doing is exactly the way that you would go about and campaign too. I mean, by flyers, by posters, word of mouth, and that's what he was going by.
Isn't it a ticker tape circus or a parade or something like that? It's not a thing.
He was tenacious. You got to get. As old as he was, he had some stamina for this sort of thing.
Yeah, he was out there in the streets putting in work, dude, and digging that hole. That was fucking inspiring.
I kick out of what he did to the guy who went.
That first reporter.
Where he stuck him
hold this for me. I'll be right back. I gotta run to the restroom.
Hold this. I gotta go to the bathroom. I gotta.
and then it says something. The narrator says something like, "Having taken care of." And actually, one thing I did want to say, I wonder if anyone remembers it better than I did, because I remember the broad strokes. But I really love the introduction to his decision to go into politics, because they were talking about like the money he needed and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, so he was trying to find a job. He had a 10th grade education. He was trying to find a job that didn't need any references, didn't need any, it didn't have any, what am I trying to say, qualifications or, anything like that. You didn't need any experience. And it's like, but that also had benefits and paid, I think you said, Mo, 6 figures. and having struck out in the want ads. And then it shows a picture of him putting up the sign, "Vote Fred" or whatever it said.
I think at some point in there they throw in that bit about and having realized that eating their own produce doesn't pay the bills or something.
Right, exactly. But that was such a great intro. It was such a great setup for the whole premise.
One thing that I liked is when the second reporter came in and started talking to his father, and he asked him if he would vote for Democrat or Republican. He said, "I would vote for whatever
votes for the best man.
Whatever I thought best." In that moment, I was like, "Good answer."
I believe he did say, "I've always voted Republican," but then he did say, "I vote for the best man."
I don't think he ever confirmed it when the guy asked him. He just said, I vote for the best man or whatever. And that's the thing. Again, that touches a little bit on how I guess like people just label them all as Republicans. That's more how country politics works. Like a lot of the people around here, it seems like they swap around, It depends on who they're fucking with, They're not just, they might not be as well informed as all of us that are connected to it all the time. But they go off of what they hear, and then some of them vote Democrat sometimes,
You keep in mind, Fred is somebody. The one thing that's one of the defining traits of these movies is about these older individuals who've been doing things for years, and politics has changed a lot, but. Keep in mind, in their days, it really was the best man. Just because somebody was running as Republican, they weren't following they weren't a slave to the whims of a particular party leader. They would do if they said they were going to do something, they could run on a platform that would have some similarities with their party, but they could move away from it. Same thing with the other, and that's the thing. So you could vote technically for a Republican who might act like a Democrat today, or vote for a Democrat that might act like a Republican today in some areas. And that's so back in those days, voting for the best person really was a thing. You could literally look at somebody and say, I need to examine them as people and who is the best person.
Also, there was that scene where he went to that county fair and he was kissing all the children and whatnot. In this day and age, I don't think that a politician could
can't kiss babies anymore. I don't think.
I don't think in this particular day and age with the corona and everything, I don't think going around kissing young children would necessarily go over well with their parents.
Well, even pre-Rona, there was a lot of memes about it. I'm not going to name names, but goddamn, they were.
But I'll admit you're right, Brandon. Some of these people have been around. There have been some sea changes in the particular platforms of the groups in the past century. There definitely have. It's like, for all his flaws, and God knows there were many, Nixon did sign the EPA into law. So I give the man props for that.
It's more of an individual,
Yeah, there have been some things that have happened that have been surprising if you look at them strictly according to, So, the idea that Fred might be his own man, if you will, does seem fully believable in the context of this film. And I do like, he does make the very valid point that his opponent has been in office for 12 years and hasn't really done a heck of a whole lot for the, So he does make some very valid points.
Actually,
when he calls him on the spending, gets him for a minute there.
Yeah, I know. Lashley has trouble holding it. I mean, he has trouble holding his own in any sort of debate.
And I encourage people to get the DVD copy of it. Those extras, there's not a ton of them, but there are some fun ones. Like it includes political cartoons from the campaign that this came to. It's like, it's just this, and then it goes there. Has a lot of money, and then it compares like this, and it has a lot of money.
For the actual campaign, so we talked about this actual campaign. He actually, to promote the film, he and John O'Brien went into a campaign where he went up against this out-of-stater who apparently was a carpetbagger trying to move to Vermont because it would be easier to win. And this cartoon Brandon's talking about is like it's showing all this kind of like countrified, this sort of Fred Tuttle from the film, basically. And then his opponent has a lot of money, That's all they have to say about the guy. Has a lot of money. And I loved how in real life he beat his opponent and then immediately endorsed his rival and still won a quarter of the vote. And apparently he and Leahy, I think was his rival, actually campaigned together. They actually campaigned together. That's it. That's inspiring. I wish we would see more of that.
That's how it used to be done. The Republican and the Democratic ones would campaign together, and you literally would do a check mark with each one what they had to offer, and you would pick the best one out of the two.
Does anyone else here think that Fred Tuttle looks like the animated character in Pixar's Up?
Yes.
A lot of it.
You should have had a dog. Squirrel. You know what? Actually, though, that is one failing. I don't think I saw a single squirrel in this whole trilogy.
No, but you saw. Yeah,
there are lots of squirrels in Vermont, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So where were they?
You saw a lot of cats.
You did.
There you go. That's what happened. It's all the cats.
There was a particular moment that I thought that was very beautiful, where Fred Tuttle was walking down the autumn leaves trail, and then the black cat just kind of slowly followed behind in the distance. That was a very beautiful shot.
Right. There were some good uses of cats in these films. I will say that.
Nature in this film.
Well, yeah. But yeah, that just makes it all the more surprising there were no squirrels. It really does.
I think like the first half of the movie is basically just building up. Like he still has, he's well behind this dude in the poll percentage, but it's like, obviously more than you would think like a joke candidate would have. It's in like the 20th percent or something like that.
Yeah, and like you said, he keeps talking about, well, it must be computer, right?
Yeah, I don't even think I'm doing that good. But then it starts gaining steam, like one favorite part of the movie for me for sure is where they're just getting the random people on camera saying why they are going to vote for Fred. And some of them are pretty great answers. And then there's just that one guy that was like, I was drunk.
And then, of course, when they were doing the poll shit, apparently he won by one vote.
One vote.
A bottle of Moxie.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, Moxie's awesome. I like the drink.
I need to try that. I don't believe I ever have.
Pleasance Hardware sells it.
What's that?
And Pleasance Hardware sells it. If you're
so you're not a fan, Dan?
No, it's disgusting.
Kind of medicinal flavored. Now, I admit Diet Moxie, which is what he was drinking, must taste terrible. I just can't imagine a diet version of that drink.
So Yeah, you do get a lot of those regional drinks, so I can't remember if I've had Moxie or not. But
I remember when
Go ahead.
birch beer
I love
was
birch beer.
only available in those areas.
It's
You could
hard to
only
get.
get it in places like Vermont and Pennsylvania and places. And you
First
could
time
never
I
get
ever
it in
had it
Virginia.
was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just,
well, I know here Black Bear soda is more important because that's from Oak Creek, like right next to Milwaukee, and I'm on that verge of Milwaukee and Oak Creek where you'll actually see Black Bear being sold, but that's our local.
Yeah, we have Henry Weinhardt out here. They also make beer, which I've drank a fair amount of.
But yeah, the whole thing of that one guy, they spent some time talking to that guy about how he wasn't really sure which one he was going to vote for. But then he found that Moxie bottle by the side of the road, and that was the sign of who he was going to vote for.
Well,
we like that.
apparently the scene where he is told that he should speak more eloquently.
Yes.
where they do that speech coaching.
Woman who apparently speaks very clearly.
Very
And
clear.
that whole scene seems to be a running gag with the locals. Because,
I think it was in our last discussion that we brought up Doolittle, Eliza Doolittle, and the My Fair Lady. But this definitely has a little bit of that My Fair Lady vibe.
yeah,
She's got that very British accent, and she's trying to teach him to pronounce Tuttle.
Smooth as butter.
Smooth as butter. Yes.
There's a word for it. He even uses it. It's like that fancy way of speaking. There's
elocution.
on the extras of this DVD, there is actually a talent show. I think
yes.
You did a great job.
What they have is a man dressed up as a woman playing the lady, and then they got a young man doing an impression of Fred, and he actually does a pretty damn good job of impersonating him.
He does a good job impersonating the lady.
Yeah, he does. It's kind of an interesting scenario. That's why I think that it seemed like it was like a running gag local. That whole scenario, just kind of making. At first, I thought it was like making fun of him, but in a sense, I guess it was.
You need to know how to say your name, Fred Tuttle. Fred Tuttle. It sounds like you're saying furry turtle.
You look like you had something to say there, Dan.
Oh no, I'm just saying everyone in this area, if you're around one person that talks like that, it all comes right back and you start talking like that. I'm not even I can do it if I'm around other people that are talking that way.
It happens with me if I drink and like my Canadian relatives are down.
I know what you mean, because and actually Brandon and I met at school in Salem, Virginia. I spent a long time in Salem. I stayed there a long time after graduating. And when I'm in Salem, I talk differently than I do here in Richmond. And it's just, you're right. When you're around certain people, you talk a certain way. And it just is it's interesting the way that can go sometimes. But
it took me till like third grade or some shit to get rid of the Canadian accent as a kid, man. So it's down there. It's buried under the surface,
Just like process, it's more like process, So.
Well, it's like I wonder how much of this is like there are certain points in your life where there are very much I guess you could say your more developmental phase and you pick up things a little more easily, they get ingrained or whatever. I mean, I was born in Kentucky. I haven't lived there for most of my life, but I was born there. So I probably have a little bit more of a countrified accent than I would.
Yeah, I've noticed it in the
You know.
past.
It does show up now and then. When I'm in Salem, it shows up a lot more than it does here, typically. But every now and then.
I mean, there's science behind it.
Yes.
A person's personality does not fully develop until they reach age 25.
Right.
Personality can change extremely slowly after that, but really and truly, you can only quickly change your personality between those ages, those teenage years when you're really forming it, and then between maybe your late teens and early 20s is when you really finalize your personality. So
And
if
that's
you're going around,
That makes sense.
I mean, my accent, which is many people say I don't have one, but I have a lot of people who say I have more of a southern bent accent. But it's an accent that I picked up things from there than my time in Emporia, which I learned a lot of things. People used to say when I was talked to them, was like how'd you learn that phrase? Like, well, it's because I've been doing therapy with people who speak like that all day. And it's, but you pick it up. Then once you turn 25 or a little older, then you start to it starts to be slower to build. Like, in my time in Richmond, I mean, I don't sound anything like a Richmonder.
Well, even though I will say I've been to where he grows up, and I would say you don't sound like someone that lives in the hills either.
only when I'm angry.
Y'all come back.
But yeah,
John too.
but yeah, that definitely has those moments. But point I was going to make, I can't remember.
I think it's kind of like towards the middle portion of the movie where his pulls start picking up and they get just about neck and neck, and the other guy starts getting nervous.
Nervous.
And the whole
Highly
time,
agreed.
Fred keeps like challenging him to these debates, right? And they have to do a couple of at least one public speaking appearance. That's one of my favorite parts too, where Fred shows up. He's like, "Yeah, Kermit was supposed to be out here, but I guess I'll just give this speech on my own or whatever." And what is it he says about his plan? He's like, "I'm Fred Tuttle, and I'm a man with a plan, and the plan might not be that good, but how exactly does he word that?"
Oh, I don't remember exactly.
He basically says it could be a shitty plan, but why not?
But a little bit before that debate, a little bit before that debate, he's got his townsfolk around him, asking them questions and stuff, and they give him this book of answers just to read overnight, and he's like, "I'm not going to read that overnight."
Oh, when he's talking with them about that's enough.
Right.
And I love how he's like, well, the narrator's like, well, now he's hired a chauffeur, and it's his father, and he's obviously a man who's probably hasn't driven in years. He probably
and you see that because it took them a long time to figure out how to get away from. Didn't he almost drive into the house?
Well.
And then, they tried to figure out how to reverse.
That reminds me, in the very beginning, there's that scene where the car door won't shut.
Right, and every time the other one opens.
And finally, he just locks the other door just completely closed, so that
opens.
Right. Yeah, that was fun. That was good time.
Or the long horse. That's like another physical comedy thing, I guess you could call it, where there's that horse that's like clearly two horses, but they make it look like it's one.
Oh yeah, where he's approaching the barn and the horses. Yeah.
Later, he's got like a straight up fishing rod that he's feeding people those fucking pamphlets out the window while he's going down the highway and shit. So
now I will admit the environmentalist in me cried foul when he went up in a plane and literally rained pamphlets down on the countryside. But I will admit that's one way to do it. But,
my favorite parts, man.
But I did like the what was I going to say?
Of course, that cow.
The part when the reporter came, courtesy Mr. Blotchley. The one who ended up holding up the barn. When he first appeared, he's like, "I'm from Smear Magazine."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh my god, that should have been a red flag right there."
Well,
and then
of course,
he's asking him all
same
these.
guy. Of course,
He's asking him all these really bad questions. What's that?
He's the same guy who ends up coming back and setting up that orgy.
The orgy.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, or trying to photograph it at any rate. So basically, you have the. So this guy comes in from Smear Magazine, and he's asking all these clearly smear questions. And Fred's just interviewed, just like, oh yeah. Did you ever? Were you ever unfaithful to your wife? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And he says all this stuff, and then and the guy has all this stuff, and then he tricks him into holding up the bar.
Yeah.
But the guy, he was having, you could see the gleam in his eye, like, oh man, yeah, I've got this guy. And then he holds, hey, could you help me with the? And it's like, you don't really feel like it's malicious on Fred's part. I don't really know if he intended to leave him there. But
because later when he comes down after the barn falls, he's like, "What the hell? What the hell happened?" I was sure I got it propped up there. Good.
You gotta love the intelligence of that dog later on.
oh jeez.
He's got his mind set on taking a piss, and the dog just comes up. He opens up the camera, and then he takes the camera film out of it.
Yes.
It was that whole thing with the women was great when they tried to set it up.
It seemed really friggin' tame, though. I have to say, it seemed really friggin' tame.
Yeah.
Especially by today's standards.
It looked like they recreated what an old man from that time probably thinks an orgy would be.
Right.
You know? If you ask Fred in his innocent old man mind, that's probably what he would think an orgy is ladies dancing around. And
they didn't exactly go beyond the toga stage, did they? So,
yeah, I mean,
I was thinking what was the movie? Wicker Man. I don't know why I'm thinking Wicker Man, or that other one that they did recently.
The old one, right?
Wicker Man. The old one. I was thinking, and of course the other one, what was the one? The one about the spring.
Yeah.
It's the one that came out this past year. What was it? The drug trip movie.
Oh, yeah. Midsummer.
Yes, Midsummer. Yeah, it also reminded me a little bit of something like they would do.
One of my favorite.
Yeah.
Definitely
before they kill you.
And I think it was shortly before this. Once they get neck and neck, he has that Blackley guy straight shook. And the dude's having dreams about fucking Fred in the night. That's one of my favorite fucking moments is where that Blackley guy wakes up after that Fred dream where he's it's all the laughing and him swinging on the swing and the weird fades and stuff. Just how could you have some horrifying night terror about Fred? But he was coming for it, you know? And obviously, the whole plan gets hatched to we gotta fuck this guy over. So they try to frame him up for an orgy, to discredit him. Obviously, that doesn't end up working out. And
yeah, I mean, you think about the time that this took place, and this was probably about the time that they were trying to frame Clinton for the same basic thing. And I mean, come on, Clinton, Fred Tuttle. I mean, come on, if Clinton can get away with it.
I don't know, but Jay in the Oval Office is a little different than Hilltop Orgies with cult members, though. You could spin that a lot of ways.
I'm sure Gingrich and co. were saying the same thing about Clinton. In fact, I know they were.
Carved owl parties in the forest or whatever.
Lots of those Latin orgies.
I don't think Fred was on that level of politics yet.
Were there any special effects in this film?
Were there now?
Not many.
Man,
Actually,
there was
maybe
the whole car scene.
There's
was
a-
a special-
car
the
scene,
whole
yeah.
car scene was a special effect in a way because having the doors open, Charlie Chaplin style. That area where he drives the car into the bridge and then comes out the other end with the horses,
Right, the horse
which
and
does
buggy.
come back to an interesting little tidbit in the films, where in the real life, of course one of the main characters, one of the older characters, had said that he had gotten a car in the early 1900s, but preferred using a horse and buggy all the way up until 1917. I think it's like, how old are these people that are doing
Well,
this?
I like the fact that when he actually did go to Washington, he actually did ride into town on a horse and buggy.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's the thing we're talking about.
That goes back to the
Long
old
horse
political
was
term of horse
probably
and buggy.
visual effect, yeah.
I like the shot of him on his lunch break, sitting down and getting out the budget and reading. I thought that was great. I was like, oh man, this guy is taking his job seriously.
Well, and, okay, we can't gloss over the amazing stunt of the movie because we got more visual effects with the long horse right there. I think that would qualify.
True.
Compared to the first movie, this is a fucking special effects extravaganza right here. And then we've got Fred performing one of the most impressive stunts I've seen in recent movie viewing, where he launches off of that swing into that pile of leaves. And it's not a clean dismount. I gotta note a little criticism there. Okay, Fred, you could have put a little bit more oomph into it. But he still launched off and landed, and at his age, he might as well have been jumping the fountain, Evel Knievel style, dude. And he's stuck.
Supposedly, he had like a hip surgery, like supposedly, like some time ago or whatnot.
How do you know he wasn't doing some Evel Knievel shit when he was younger?
He was. I mean, just that was like some Evel Knievel shit. I mean, I hope they didn't ask him to do that, and that was just Fred being Fred, because I don't know if I could have asked that adorable old man to fling himself swing.
Right.
Alrighty. Did anyone want to say their favorite scenes?
Well, we're glossing over the end there, bud. He won the shit.
He did.
Oh,
By
yeah.
one vote.
By one
And
vote.
I liked that moment where the guy pointed out that one vote mattered.
Yes.
Did like
Did you guys watch the post-credits scene where it shows him in his suit and shit, and he's sitting in front of the White House taking a dip of
he sits down to have his lunch and he gets out the budget and he starts reading it.
Oh, yeah.
I love how he's got that red mountain though, like on hand. That's fucking
And he's got the
adorable.
fishing pole, of course, with him.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Still got the overalls on, under the suit.
Big scene from this, or it could be a couple, if you wanted a couple of scenes from this film. What would it be?
Who you find that there too?
I'm gonna
Is
go
that-
ahead and I'll go ahead and start with favorite scenes, and I love that last scene because we just talked about it, but it's got to be my favorite scene because it just exemplifies everything in the movie.
Yeah.
The whole concept, which is my favorite part of the movie, which is his campaign slogan, "Why not?"
Yeah.
And that whole lunch, sitting there reading the whole budget, it throws it all together for me.
Mhm.
It just it really was the best ending the movie could have had.
Especially one thing we did kind of mention, we did kind of gloss over, I guess we could say, is he talks about like he doesn't really want to leave Vermont at all. He almost is very reticent about the possibility of winning because he doesn't want to leave Vermont. So this is definitely just underscores in that final scene the idea that, well, he is really taking this seriously, even
Quite the
though
adventure.
you kind of wondered if he was. Yeah.
What about you, Jake? If there was a scene that you could take from this film, what would it be?
I do love that. And there are other moments I love, but I think my favorite part is probably the initial description of where they're trying to describe the job he needs. And they end up on the Senate because it's the one that checks all the boxes.
What about you, Dan? What would you think?
I don't know. There's something about the scene where they talk about he has a $16 budget for his campaign, and he's in the car doing like donuts with the
road
sign on top of the roof, just says his name on it. That kills.
I forgot about that. I love that. He talks about he railed against the PAC donations that all the other stuff got, and then he was so apologetic that he got a PAC donation from the Boy Scouts. It was like a $16 donation.
Yeah.
It was great.
What about you, Mo? What if there was a scene that you could take from this movie? What would it be?
Oh man, it's one of those things where there's just so much good stuff packed into it that it's hard for me to really narrow it down to like a definitive favorite scene. If I had to pick one, probably where he's like transition there with the news reporter where he's like, he says that he's still not sure it's right, but he's digging himself a pretty big hole or whatever. And then you think that he's just saying it like figuratively, right? But then it comes over and it shows him he's just doing that good old man speak, like, I don't know, it's good digging though. Like that's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing is where he's like, it's good digging though. Like,
well, they're burying a horse.
I know what he means. It's like it's easy going so far. He hasn't hit any rocks, but it's just it just I don't know the whole thing that it means to him in his mind, like the statement that he's making with it is pretty cool.
The fact that he thinks that we can dig ourselves out of the national debt.
Well, if we all throw $1 in the hole,
might as well dig our way to China.
Oh, actually, though, that hole, like I said, that was actually a grave for a horse. Believe it or not.
So he's for real helping someone dig a hole, like it wasn't just a hole they dug for the movie.
They're actually digging a hole.
That makes
a horse,
so much better to me, dude. He's out there digging a horse hole. It did have the dimensions. I've seen people bury plenty of horses, and that's it's a large hole for a reason. Damn, yeah, that just makes that even more special to me. Actually, out there putting in elbow grease, helping some other farmer dig a horse hole,
Right.
Oh yeah. I guess my favorite scene is that whole scene where she's trying to make him eloquently speak his name. I mean, to me that's kind of priceless. To
My Fair Lady scene.
Hey.
It did have that little vibe to it, didn't it?
But in any case, let's see. What about the music that was involved?
Should definitely give a shout out to the music, no doubt about it. This one was really heavy on like the Sousa marches and that sort of thing, but it also had some other good music in it too.
It hit the best world of both worlds for me, of like the political music that you think of, and then like also that countrified good shit that we got little taste of in the first one, but it was definitely better off.
It felt more polished this time around.
Yeah, the whole movie did.
Yeah.
If I was to look at these and rank them artistically, musically, and artistically as far as visuals and just effectiveness of things, I would put this. Actually, I would put this one right in the middle of the three. Entertainment value, this one is the best one in my opinion, probably the best written. But just pure art value, this middle, yes.
Apparently, the guy behind the music sound mixing department of this film was actually done by Roger Strauss, and he's actually done some stuff with Sesame Street. Behind the sound street department of that. He's done stuff on the Chappelle Show, and a few things on Comedy Central. I guess that's something that goes for this film. I think that's kind of unique.
Yeah, that's cool.
That he went on to do some of these things afterwards. So, but in any case,
what about you, Dan? What do you think about the music there? I mean,
I love the music in all three of them. I think it's perfect. You know, it sums up the feeling of the visuals on the screen. Really, it goes hand in hand.
Indeed, yeah, it works very well. It's I think honestly, both the first two movies, and you know, obviously, I'm sure the third one to some extent can be said that, you know, I think the soundtrack actually kind of makes a lot more of the movie than maybe we're giving it credit for, because you know it is right there, and it contributes directly to that whole overall vibe that you're getting from them. You know,
Definitely.
And I think that works especially well in this one compared to the first one, and that, you know, I don't know enough about like politics to know what political music is, but you kind of know it when you hear it, kind of thing, or like stuff that you associate with like old-timey politics and shit. And there's a fair amount of that in there mixed in with other stuff. I think musically one of my favorite moments is at some point they have like a band with like a stand-up bass or some type of violin or whatever.
Right.
And, is there anything else?
Well, I do want to make one more comment on the music. This is not actually from the film itself, but from the bonus features. One of the really cool bonus features they have is a song called A Memory of Fred by the Starlight Rhythm Boys. It's co-written by, written by Billy Bratcher of the group. And they did that. It was a bonus feature. Because he, of course, passed before the DVD came out. And they have this thing. It's basically just a slideshow of Fred Tuttle images with this song. And it's a great song. It really is. And I love that. I love that, watching that. I was like, that was a great bonus feature. And of course, you know, it was a nice little addition to this one, definitely.
How much does this set run for? I mean, it's been mentioned that it's expensive.
Or a little bit over. That's how much the set runs for.
Well, I got it used for about 70, so
Yeah.
There you go.
I got it
it's
for a little under 70, so yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Dan,
worth
what do I
having,
got to
though.
do with setting up a trade for those other two VHS?
I don't have the DVDs either. I just have the VHS.
Oh.
I have a couple of DVDs. I don't have Man with a Plan DVD. That's the only one I'm missing. So
Well, one day, right?
You know what I thought was interesting? That Fred actually had a stunt double. Yeah.
How do you feel about this there? What the fuck? Don't tell me that goddamn swing set scene is fake.
Baxter Dottie.
God damn it. Dreams here. Fred. Damn it. So Dan, what do you say I order you the Man with the Plan DVD and you ship me the two tapes I need? That sounds like
yeah,
great.
I gotta find them again, but yeah, I can hook you up.
Let's hook it up. See, history made right here. I need them. This one is just amazing, you know. And I've always had it on VHS thanks to Dan, so might as well get the other two on there and enjoy it that way until eventually a more economical set comes out. Let's, you know, try to get the ball rolling on that too.
Well, like I said, maybe given the what we've been hearing the last couple of days with the other films we've done, maybe this one will get a Shout or Kino or Criterion. You know, one of them will get on it.
Good movies galore. Juju keeps working in our favor.
I would love to see Criterion get this trilogy, but I want to talk more on that when we cover the last one, because it seems like a good finale to just talk about the set as a whole, really, at the end of it all. Because I really do think that we should talk about the trilogy as a whole at the end.
Yeah. For sure. We'll leave the section for that in the end. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you enjoyed our ramblings on this discussion. I think that's all that we have for this film, but definitely check the film out.
Hold up.
It
Fred's
What's
dead,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty
yeah,
rare. I think we should take a moment and say,
he passed in 03, apparently.
yeah, I think that's when they were like the second movie or the third movie came out. Yeah.
Shortly after it. Yeah.
I think we should take a moment to say thanks to Fred and to just address how awesome it is that this little old man from Vermont with his cane now lives forever with all of these people that enjoy these movies, because he'll never be really dead once you experience this. He just becomes he's an entity into his own. So there it is. Thanks, Fred. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Dave. I just
not a problem. Normally at this point we go into what who we are within the cast, but I think I'll save that for the last film discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
We are no one. We are Fred.
We are the Inside Movies Galore. So, thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. Thank you for watching, and like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for checking this film out with us.